What questions? I saw a question there. I'd like to field that question to see if I have learned correctly. All right? There is nothing that a woman can do that merits abuse. There is nothing that anybody can do that merits abuse. Did I get that right?
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can I add to that?
Yeah, and then we'll get to the
Because-
next question.
You know, what I hear in your question is there's this residual doubt, did I do something to cause the abuse? And let me assure you, no. Okay? It is always the abused, the one who's doing the abusing, that person has the issue. Nothing, like you said, ever merits abuse. There's never any justification for abuse. And there's no way you could ever make somebody else do something to you, ever. That is always their choice, always.
Yeah, and we've practiced that in Relationship Revolution. The phrase, you make me, is a lie.
It's a lie, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I choose.
Absolutely. Because you live what you learned. Once again, the family of origin you grew up in and how you were treated growing up even, that is your normal, okay? So you're going to naturally gravitate toward people who treat you like that because in many cases, the woman who's been abused has come to believe that this is all I deserve anyhow, okay? And those who love you beat you. Those who love you abuse you, okay? That's what you learned as, you know, as being a victim of abuse, sadly. And so, yes, there has to be some healing take place so that your picker, like you say, can be fixed. Like you mentioned, your picker's broken. Okay, that can happen a lot. That's pretty common. But absolutely, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Brenda, take it away.
It's interesting. We just did this last night in class. There's something called the cycle of violence. And the cycle of violence is a circle, kind of like on that form. And the only way out of the cycle of violence is either to change the cycle or to get out of it. What the cycle of violence looks like is that there's a tension point in the relationship. Every relationship has tension. And then there comes, the tension seems to build. And whether that's using drugs, you know, you have this pattern of abuse of drugs, and the tension builds. And then there's a triggering event that happens. For example, hey, I looked on your phone and I say you're talking to this guy. What's this all about? That's a triggering event. And then either abuse starts happening, like physical, emotional, whatever the abuse. And then after, if it is a physical abuse, then there's this, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean to do that. I didn't mean for that to happen. And there's this honeymoon phase. And in this honeymoon phase is the phase where those who are victimized in this constant circle, or this cycle, is that's the most dangerous part for the victim because that's when the victim is brought right back into the circle. The place of change is in the tension area. And what you're talking about is, didn't I cause it? I poked him. Well, there's a difference between the reaction of a man and a reaction of a woman when it comes to a triggering event and an explosion. Women are like a roller coaster. They see it coming, and then they come down like a roller coaster. Men, they come up, ching, ching, like a. So what happens is this woman sees the signs. They see the pattern because they know it. They see that tension building, and they don't like that tension because that man's reaction is like a jack in the box. So what women tend to do is during that tension phase, which is really hard, they trigger it themselves. to have a sense of control because they can control when that explosion is going to happen. That's when it's most dangerous at the same time. But women do that because they're in that pattern. It's not necessarily their fault. It's a protective thing that they do, and they see it. And so that pattern continues to go. That tension building and going around and around and around. What the Hit No More does, and what he should have learned, if you're still in the relationship, is that that tension place is where you work out that change. And I tell victims a lot, I say, you know what, that honeymoon phase is not real. This is the sorry part. This is where their emotions might be real, but the change is not real. There's no change. It's just all emotion. When you say change with somebody, you're going to see it in the tension building phase. And that takes work. So that's why people get stuck in this cycle again and again and again. And the only way out of either to leave the relationship or to change it in this section here. Did I answer some of your question? Did I help you to understand that a little bit better? Because the visual is very powerful to know that there is this cycle that continues on. And there's a lot of distortions in thinking and viewing and seeing that, because everything that the woman specifically in the relationship wants in that relationship happens in that honeymoon phase. And it might be intense, it might be just a little bit, it might just give that little bit of hope, and it says, I want that. They long for it. But the relationship should always be that honeymoon phase, meaning that you should be able to work out your disagreements in this area. So that when a triggering event, and we all know it happens, comes, we know how to handle, and that we don't have these specific cycles.
Sure. Another question.
No, on this wheel, you can have one section. If it is in a pattern of behavior with an intimate partner, it could be a family member that you're living with, that if it's in a pattern of behavior, not just an assault, like it happens once, I mean, we all get mad sometimes, but if there's a pattern of behavior, that's domestic violence. So it doesn't have to be a spouse, but it's not somebody, it has to be a family member or somebody you're intimately involved in, okay? You can send them to Harmony House. They would have to call themselves. Any victim has to call themselves, and they get assessed. And also, you might want to encourage them to describe what they're going through instead of saying, I'm being abused. That doesn't help us understand what abuse is. And we're not going to tell them, hey, we're not going to ask the question, are you being abused? So if they want to call, encourage them. And it's really embarrassing to just tell their story, tell them what's going on, because that's what they're going to be asked. They're going to be asked, what's going on? And so they can call. And the number is 837-7700. 837-7700. And we do take families as well as single. Pets, if they're emotional support or therapy animals, they have to have records, they have to have doctor's note and shots, but they can bring their therapy animals.
All right.
And how about non-therapy animals? Is there a shelter you guys
No.
work with?
Oh, well, we can't tell what that shelter is. Sorry. If you have some kind of animal that you have to leave behind and you won't go to a place like Harmony House, let us know that, and we will help you maneuver that somewhere.
The reason I
possible.
brought that up is because one of the forms of abuse is that the abuser will actually abuse the pets that mean something to the victim.
And the victim
So
will.
what they do is they leave and take the pets with them, but they've got to have some place to house the animals.
And a lot of them won't leave because of the pets, because they don't want to leave the pets in that situation, because abusers will kill their animals, torment their animals, torture them, just like the children. And if they're single, that's almost like their children.
You did your master's on why pastors don't address this issue.
Actually, why do pastors not engage domestic violence?
Yeah.
Not just address it. Engaging means being involved, talking about it, addressing it. It's a whole thing. Yes, I did my
Sure.
master's.
And after talking with you, I was speaking with one of my pastor friends about this, and he said, that's easy why they don't do it, because they'd have to confront half their boards. That's kind of funny, but really it's not. Okay? So, yeah, believe them. The other thing that in reading your paper that you came up with is, man, pastors, preachers, please talk about this from the pulpit in order to open up the conversation for somebody who needs to open the conversation, to create a safe space to have the conversation.
And if the pastors can't do it themselves, to have someone to get up and talk about it, like testimony, on a testimony night or something like that. So
Sure.
that they know that it's safe for them to come and talk about it. Kind of like what we're doing here. And I just have to put this in, since we're on the subject. We've been talking about Hit No More and Harmony House, but we're not representing them here tonight. We are representing ourselves, and we're speaking on our own behalf. We just so happen to work there and be part of that. So just so you know that we're not trying to speak for these organizations, but we are just telling you what we do. Well, I'll tell you, I'll explain it by saying a scenario. You get into a relationship, and the abuser, or the one who wants the power and control, says, "Oh, you're going through a lot of things. Let me help you. You want to talk about it?" So they talk about their issue, and they say, "Well, you might need a little bit of medication to go with that. So let me get you to a doctor." And then they start taking medication. And then if the person starts to resist it, that person will say, "Oh, you know what? You're the one that has all these emotional problems. Look at now you're the one that's going to the psychologist. You're the one that actually needs all this, and I am not the problem." The other thing that they'll do is they'll actually do things that will specifically make that person especially for women, misjudge their senses. They will take away their senses by saying, "Oh, you saw somebody over there? No, you didn't. You're just seeing things. Remember, you had to go to counseling. Remember, I had to help you with this. Now, look, I'm going to tell you what the reality is." So they change reality for that person so that person has no sense of what their own reality is. That's what gaslighting in a lump sum is where they actually question everything they do. And so everybody's out to get them. The abusers made it so impossible for them to trust one thing because it constantly changes the mark, it constantly changes the reality and throws them off balance. And that's part of control, is to throw them off balance.
Sure. So, hey, Google it at your dinner table and bring it up for conversation with the kids. Just go through all of them. Gaslighting, there's a whole bunch of them. It's interesting to talk about and come
And the
up
name
with
came from a movie that actually somebody was trying to steal the wealth of a woman and would turn the lights off and on and drove her actually crazy. Mm-hmm. So it came from a movie called Gaslight.
Kirk and Brenda, thank you for taking the risk to have this unscripted conversation. Will you please thank them with me?